A cloud of suspicion surrounds the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife, whose bodies were found in their Santa Fe home.
Inside Gene Hackman's secret tunnel, the air is cold enough to see your breath. Stone walls sweat with condensation. The silence is absolute. No wind, no sound from the surface. Nothing but the slow drip of water somewhere deeper in the dark. Federal investigators had already found 2 bodies in the mansion above. They had cataloged a ransacked library, an open safe, furniture dragged across hardwood floors. They thought the worst was behind them. Then someone found the hidden passage behind the wall, and everything changed. Nobody on that property, not the staff, not the neighbors, not law enforcement, had any idea this tunnel existed. That single fact reframes everything else. Gene Hackman, one of the most celebrated actors in Hollywood history, had built his entire life around keeping this secret buried. He almost succeeded. What investigators found at the bottom of those stone steps was never meant to surface. The breach, February 26, 2025, 11 in the morning. A convoy of federal vehicles pulled up to reinforced steel gates set deep in the forest outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. Behind those gates sat a $4 million compound, the private estate of Gene Hackman, 95, and his wife Betsy Arakawa, 65. Nobody had seen or heard from either of them in days. No phone calls returned, no staff arriving for work. Complete silence from a property that under normal circumstances ran like a small military installation. It was a handyman who raised the alarm. Not family, not a friend. A handyman who told deputies he believed the couple had died inside. The gates had to be forced. The locks cut. That alone told agents something was deeply wrong. This was not a property where someone accidentally left a door open. Everything about this compound was engineered to stay sealed unless someone on the inside chose otherwise. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were found dead alongside their dog. Authorities confirmed Betsy had died roughly a week before Gene. Her cause of death was a severe viral infection. His was heart failure. Natural causes on paper. But the scene did not match the paperwork. The Santa Fe Sheriff's Department told the public there were no signs of foul play. Standard language meant to close the story. But in that same statement, they admitted the scene was suspicious enough to require a full forensic search of the entire property. No foul play, but suspicious enough to bring in federal teams with thermal imaging. Those 2 statements do not belong in the same world. The timeline raises questions nobody has answered. Betsy died a full week before Gene. 7 days. Hackman, a 95-year-old man, was alive in that house with his wife's body for up to a week. Alone. No call for help. No attempt to contact anyone. What keeps a man silent for 7 days in a house with a dead loved one? Fear? Duty? Or the knowledge that calling for help would mean letting strangers inside? And strangers would find what was underneath. The fortress above. To understand what the FBI walked into underground, you have to understand what sat above it. Hackman's estate was not a home. It was an installation. Dense forest on every side. Towering stone walls along the perimeter. Motion sensors at every access point. Thermal cameras running 24-hour surveillance rivaling government black sites. Staff were hand-picked, vetted, and bound by legal agreements so comprehensive that not one of them ever spoke publicly about what went on inside those walls. Decades of employees, not a single leak. In the age of social media, that silence does not happen by accident. It is enforced. Building permit requests came back redacted. Property records contained gaps no clerk could explain. One researcher from the Santa Fe Historical Society spent months pulling land records on the estate and then simply stopped. stopped returning calls, never published. No one knows what she found or who told her to quit looking. Inside, investigators found hallways lined with original masterpieces, furniture dating back centuries, gardens filled with botanical specimens existing in fewer than a dozen places on Earth. Dr. Elena Vasquez, an architectural historian at the University of New Mexico who consulted on the property assessment, reviewed the layout and went quiet. This was designed like a museum built inside a military compound, she said. The beauty was real, but so were the countermeasures. That combination does not happen unless someone is protecting something specific. Body camera footage shows deputies entering the mansion. The silence is immediate and heavy. But what unsettled agents was not the quiet. It was the evidence that someone had been working through the house before they arrived. Furniture dragged across floors, books pulled from shelves and restacked incorrectly. A bedroom safe open and empty. Someone had been searching for something, or hiding it. Then agents walked into the library. The descent, behind a section of wall in Hackman's private library, concealed so precisely you could stand in that room 1,000 times and never notice. Federal agents found a hidden mechanism, not a bookcase on a hinge. An engineered entry point requiring a specific activation sequence. Whoever built it wanted it invisible to anyone who did not already know it was there. Behind it, a narrow passageway, stone steps descending into total blackness. No light, no ventilation, just carved stone dropping straight into the earth. The agents went down. The temperature fell with every step. The air thickened, damp and metallic, carrying the taste of rust. Their flashlight beams swept the stone walls and landed on something that stopped the lead agent mid-step. Deliberate markings covered the walls. Not graffiti. Precise inscriptions carved with tools and intention, some resembling alchemical notation, others resembling technical blueprints for devices that should not have existed in whatever era this tunnel was built. One section featured what appeared to be a schematic for a machine with no modern equivalent, gears, chambers, and conduits, in configurations a forensic technician later described as engineering from nowhere. The construction itself told a layered story. Near the library entrance, the stonework was mid-20th century. Clean cuts, industrial materials, concrete reinforcement. But deeper in, everything became older and rougher. Hand-carved joints, primitive reinforcement, pick and chisel marks rather than power tools. Marcus Devlin, a structural engineer who reviewed leaked photographs, studied them carefully. This was not built by the homeowner, he said. The upper section was modernized, but the core of this tunnel was already here. Hackman moved into it. He inherited it. A vast underground space, frozen in time, ancient wooden crates stacked against the walls. Some had collapsed with age, spilling contents across the stone floor. Yellow documents, rusted metallic objects, artifacts belonging to no identifiable era. One agent opened a dust-covered box and found photographs. Fragile, curling at the edges. Faces no one recognized. Dressed in clothing from a century past. Some showed clandestine meetings in windowless rooms. Others captured locations that do not correspond to any known site on record. One image showed a group of men around a table covered in maps. A single overhead bulb throwing hard shadows across their faces. On the back, someone had written a date, 1937, and a single word in a language that still has not been identified. Leather-bound files sat beside the photographs. Coded dates, redacted names. Passages describing events deliberately erased from official records. Some pages had been partially burned and then abandoned. Other documents bore insignias from organizations that officially dissolved decades ago. Agents estimated it could take years to catalog everything in that chamber. The floor demanded its own attention. Circular patterns, intricate and deliberate, carved into the stone, resembling celestial maps from above. Star charts laid out with a precision requiring advanced mathematical knowledge, not decorative. These patterns corresponded to specific astronomical alignments, constellations, planetary positions, orbital paths. Whoever carved them was not guessing. They were mapping something for someone who would come later and know how to read it. The tools recovered from the crates were equally wrong. Engravings matching no known manufacturer or period. One device, a palm-sized metal cylinder with rotating internal rings, appeared to have no seams, no visible method of assembly, as though cast as a single piece. A feat current metallurgical techniques still struggle to replicate at that scale. Dr. James Whitfield, a former FBI forensic analyst with 19 years processing classified evidence, reviewed the publicly available details. When an agency goes this quiet this fast, he said, it means one of two things. Either they found nothing and they are embarrassed, or they found something so significant that the disclosure conversation has moved above the investigative team. This does not look like embarrassment. The territory surrounding Hackman's estate is not simply art galleries and desert sunsets. Los Alamos, birthplace of the atomic bomb, sits just down the road. The Manhattan Project, nuclear testing, black-budget weapons research, all within driving distance of Hackman's front gate. Freedom of Information requests have confirmed extensive underground construction in this region during the Cold War. How extensive remains classified. Richard Payne, a retired Department of Energy consultant who worked on facility assessments in northern New Mexico through the 1990s, chose his words carefully. There are systems under those mesas built to outlast the surface, he said. Some were decommissioned, some were sealed. Some were simply forgotten, disconnected from every official record. The steel in that tunnel was military grade. The rivet spacing matched construction techniques from high-security government installations built in the 1950s. A wine cellar does not get built like a bank vault. A storage room does not get sealed from the inside. But a forgotten spur of a classified government network inherited by whoever built above it that changes the entire scale of what we are dealing with. Neighbors had always felt something was wrong. Margaret Calloway owned the adjacent property for 22 years. Low-frequency vibrations at 2 or 3 in the morning, she said. Not plumbing, not heating, industrial. Deep. You felt it in your ribs. She raised it with Hackman once. He gave her a look she still thinks about. Some things are better left below the surface, he told her. She does not laugh about it anymore. A retired geologist named Frank Delqua, living 2 properties east, independently confirmed the vibrations. He set up a portable seismometer one summer. The readings were rhythmic, mechanical, something running on a schedule underground. He filed a noise complaint with the county in 2019. It was never followed up on. Workers who discovered the tunnel entrance during renovations also found a secondary communication system hardwired into the estate's walls. Not a phone line. A closed-circuit system connecting the main house directly to the underground chamber. Wiring predating modern telecommunications by decades, but functional and maintained. Someone had kept this line active for years, communicating with whatever was below on a channel that could not be intercepted. A ghost line. Who was on the other end? Here is what people forget about Gene Hackman. Before the fortress, before the silence, before he withdrew from public life so completely that even people who lived near him could go months without catching a glimpse of him. He was one of the most genuinely warm presences in American film. Not warm in the performed way that celebrity sometimes manufactures, but warm in the way that makes strangers feel like they already knew him. His barber in Santa Fe told a local reporter that Hackman would come in every few weeks, settle into the same chair, and spend an hour talking about Hemingway novels and the Kansas weather he had grown up in. He tipped double. He remembered people's children by name, by age, by which sports team they played for, and whether they had gotten into the school they applied to. At the local farmers market, vendors recognized him on sight. He bought green chilies in bulk and made self-deprecating jokes about his Spanish. A local librarian recalled how he would linger after community events, genuinely curious about whatever conversation he had wandered into. Present in a way that most people at his level of fame simply are not. This was not a man built for isolation. Stop and think about what that means. People do not lock themselves away from a world they love unless something compels them to. The surveillance systems, the legal agreements, the wall of silence around everyone who ever worked that property, the cameras, the sealed gates, the layers of security. He did not build all of that because he was eccentric. He built it because something underneath his house required it. From the French Connection to Enemy of the State, Hackman spent his career inhabiting men trapped inside conspiracies they could not escape. Men who knew too much and built walls around themselves because the alternative was worse. Maybe that was never simply acting. The official account is that he died of heart failure at 95. Plausible. But it does not explain why a couple with access to the finest medical care available chose to isolate themselves completely in their final days. No physician calls, no emergency contacts reached, no staff on the property. The alarm system was still active when investigators arrived, but the internal cameras had been manually disabled. Two people alone in a fortress, dying in silence, while something sealed 40 feet beneath them held its breath. Here is the detail that haunts everyone who has examined this case closely. The tunnel entrance in the library was not sealed when agents found it. The mechanism had been activated recently. Gene Hackman, a man in his mid-90s, had gone down into that cold, damp passage not long before he died. Why? What was he checking on? What was he afraid of? Or, and this is the question no one wants to say directly, was he hiding from something he understood had finally located him? Deep in the far wall of the chamber, past the crates and the scattered files and the star charts pressed into the stone floor, the agent's flashlight beams found it. An iron door set into the rock. No handle on the outside. No visible hinges. Just a corroded steel surface with weld marks running along every seam. Sealed from the inside by someone who never came back out. The lock was not designed to keep people from entering. It was designed to prevent something from leaving. Here is what nobody noticed until it was too late to ask Hackman about it. The FBI has said absolutely nothing publicly about what lies beyond that door. No official statement, no leak, no background briefing to a reporter who could be trusted with a narrow disclosure. In an era when classified documents surface on social media within hours of being mishandled, that level of containment requires active and deliberate suppression. And that silence communicates more than any press conference ever could. FBI forensic teams are still down there working through the chamber, cataloging every artifact, decoding every document, analyzing every symbol carved into those walls. Trace DNA is being processed. The inscriptions are being run through linguistic analysis. Metallurgists are examining the anomalous tools. Astronomers are interpreting the star charts on the chamber floor. Historians of pre-industrial engineering have been brought in. Months have passed since the initial discovery. In any normal investigation, something leaks. A preliminary finding shared off the record. An unnamed source who cannot resist. In this case, nothing. The information locked around that tunnel is tighter than the information surrounding the deaths themselves. And that tells you everything you need to know about what kind of discovery this actually is. Whatever is down there is not simply historically significant. It is operationally sensitive. Someone made a decision that the contents of that chamber still require full containment. Not in 1950. Not during the Cold War. Right now. Today. Beneath the estates of the powerful. Beneath the forests and the mountains and the quiet towns we believe we understand. There are doors that were never meant to be opened. Gene Hackman guarded one of those doors for decades. He organized his entire existence around it. The walls, the cameras, the legal agreements, the vanishing staff, the total withdrawal from a public life he had once genuinely loved. An existence engineered at every level to ensure that no one ever found what was underneath. He carried that weight from the height of his career to the final hours of his life. And now he is gone. The last person who knew every passage of that tunnel, every crate in that chamber, every marking on those walls. Gone. Whatever sits behind that welded iron barrier 40 feet below his library floor is no longer his to protect. The question is not whether the FBI knows what is behind that door. They do. The question is, what could be so dangerous, so fundamentally destabilizing, so threatening to the world as we understand it, that the answer is complete silence rather than disclosure? Was Hackman the last guardian of something buried long before he was born? Or was he its final prisoner? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you want to be here when the next piece of this story breaks, hit subscribe. I will see you in the next one.